There we go. Um, and then after Derrick and Margie talk a little bit just about, some things that they've learned over the years as working musicians. The last little section of today is going to be, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this office hours idea. And today is really just about sort of throwing out lots of resources and lots of information. And all of this is sort of, I have all of this collected on hand. So if anything sort of seems like it goes by and you're like, wait, what was that? Please feel free to like stop, pause, go back, anything at any time. So with all of that, I'm going to do my little introduction here, which is just talking about the specific concerns that we have as cultural practitioners. And again, this is from my experience, both working with MACNO and talking to a lot of folks over the last few years. We've been doing our micro grant program, which has involved me and my coworker Renard talking to people, individually. And we've talked to 800 and some people, and certain patterns and things just become so clear, and certain obstacles to people feeling successful. And then also my own experience as a working musician. So the things that I want to sort of list as like the sort of large obstacles or barriers or things to think about is one, being sort of in charge of your own stuff. Two, often kind of sliding into it, never having like a formal start date like you might at a different kind of job. Maybe you pick up a gig somewhere and then you pick up more gigs. Also, I wanted to say I will often speak in terms of musician life, and I recognize that that's not the same across all cultural practices. I will try to sort of weave in some examples from other types of cultural practices as well, like visual art and different things. But if there's something that I'm saying that doesn't feel relevant to you, and please feel free to speak up and ask a question or clarify something, or we can reframe things for individual relevance for sure. So then you also have the piece, the patchwork life is something that we think about a lot. The patchwork life is by definition can be much harder to manage. You don't have the single W-2. You don't have an HR department. A lot of times, something I've been joking about lately is that I need an HR department for myself, like for my own personal life. And it's something I never really appreciated until I think this year. And just recognizing the lack of resources that often exists for folks in this world. And because there's sort of a lack of any centralized information. And then of course you have the all or partly or mostly cash economy, which leads to all sorts of different challenges because keeping track of it involves different tools. And something like taxes or accessing government aid, which became a major issue during the pandemic. This has all come up because the pandemic kind of exposed a lot of this stuff, and all of a sudden people were not able to access resources, things like unemployment. So all of that, is sort of the moment when it becomes relevant. If you're sort of going along and you have your structures, and then all of a sudden you can't access aid and help, and you can't get things that would make your life easier that other people have access to, that's a problem. So I know one big thing that we've been hearing feedback on is a lot of times folks are looking for help getting set up to do taxes or to do them differently in future. A lot of times folks are interested in getting set up to do an LLC, which is a just a way to sort of have your existence documented on paper. And one thing I guess that, and this is from a presentation on musician life that I've given a number of times at some local universities, one thing that I say a lot is put yourself on paper in some way. It doesn't even need to be, creating an LLC. It might just be starting a list of all the artwork you sold this month and how much you made in October versus December. And I think that is one way that the sort of the daunting factor can get overcome, is by just starting from where you're at and starting with documentation and just recognizing that any steps you take can make your life easier in future. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kathy to kind of talk about some of these things from the point of view of a community financial institution. And if there are any questions, again, please feel free to just throw in a question or put it in the chat. And take it away, Ms. Kathy.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, and thank you all for being here, for being engaged in this topic. I am excited to be here. So, again, I'm with Hope Enterprise Corporation, Hope Credit Union. So, we are a credit union. We have Hope Enterprise Corporation, which is our loan fund. And then we also have a Policy Institute. And that Policy Institute helps us to be advocates for financial policies that affect low to moderate income communities, which is mainly where we focus our work. We're a community development financial institution. So, what does that mean? That means that we are a financial institution that is an intermediary for funding sources to do work in economically distressed communities and to do, I like to call it sort of not the traditional way. I spent 25 years of my career at a big bank, so I can definitely differentiate between the two. And credit unions are definitely financial institutions that want to have relationships with the individuals to really help to really find them where they are and to help them to create plans for themselves and to help them to build wealth. And that comes out in the products and services that we have. Our products and services are different. We have checking accounts that are free. We encourage you to have a savings account, not just because we want the deposits, but because we want to help you to build wealth. We want you to take those steps, and we know that savings is important. So I'm not going to go deep into the products and services, the types of products, and well, I'm not going to go deep into the actual products and services. I'll just talk about the types that I think can more relate to products and services that would be important to you for the type of environment that you work in. So first of all, just listening to Hannah, and having worked with this organization before and having worked with artists before and with people that are in the cultural practices, having done a lot of work in the past 2 years with the Paycheck Protection Program and listening to the stories and assisting, um, artists with getting their paperwork through. I think it's just really important, and Hannah hit on a lot of those, is to first of all have a relationship with a financial institution, right? So there are normal people there that want to engage with the community and want to engage with whatever your situation is and help you to understand how these can benefit you. Savings accounts don't pay any great interest rates these days, but they do help you to manage your money. They do help you to save. And I just like to use the term to build wealth. So build wealth doesn't mean that it's someone that comes with a ton of money, right? It's building wealth is just adding. It's pluses and minuses, right? So it's just adding to what you have to get where you want to be. Um, and so just understanding what federal regulations are, because what I hear is, I work in a lot of cash and the government just wants to track your cash. Well, that is true when it gets to a certain amount. And there is some talk about, deposits up to $600 now that may be tracked, or there's a special form you have to fill out. But that hasn't happened yet. But having a relationship with a financial institution, like a credit union or like Hope, you get to talk to someone that can help you to understand how that really impacts you, what the benefits are, and it's mostly going to be benefits, but what the benefits are, and can answer any questions that you might have. So again, I indicated that we have free checking accounts, we have savings accounts. If you're in a situation where you want to establish credit, we have very low loans. We can make loans of $250. And that really is a starter to help you to build credit. We ask that you make a loan for, I'm sorry, I said $250. It's $500. So you make a loan for $500. $250 we ask that you put in a savings account, and the other $250 can go to whatever else you need to possibly contribute to your business. Then you would set up an account. We would ask that you set up a checking and a savings account, and you would deposit the money for that loan payment every month into your checking account. But at the same time, you would put something on the side in your savings account where you would set a goal to let those funds sit there. So a couple of things are happening. You're following some good financial habits. If it's a credit issue or if it's not a credit issue, you're helping to build a credit report, and that would be a good credit report. And so it's a lot of things that happen with that. And so we offer some, additional financial literacy. We have on our website, we have budgeting tools and planning tools that can just help you. I want to talk a little bit more about budgeting in a minute as well. So, our products and services are low maintenance. We do offer um, mobile apps, so you can look at your accounts online, or you can transfer money online, you can deposit checks online. We do have those features as well, if that is something that you would be interested in. So, the main thing is, I would say, to make sure that you get to know, you get to know a banker. So at Hope, we call them member service reps. They would be the person that would be your what you would know as your teller. They're also the ones that answer your questions, that can open your account, and get to know them. Being a CDFI, sometimes there's special programs that we offer. The first persons that we reach out to are the people that we know, right? The people that we know, we have a relationship. Not that we don't open it up to anyone, but they let you know. So it may be a specific grant loan funded program, could have a grant portion to it. That's for a particular parish, that's for a particular industry, and you get to know about it first. Right now, anyone that was affected by Ida, no matter what your industry is, and you're a member of Hope, there's $1,000 loan that you could get, no credit pulled or anything. So that's just an example of the benefits of having a relationship with your banker at a credit union. So one of the other things that I wanted to mention too is, there's a lot of technical support out there to help you with some of the questions that you might have that Hannah mentioned. Should I remain a sole proprietor? Should I open an LLC? Should I organize an LLC? Whatever business structure. So there's a lot of different financial technical assistance providers out there. Once you're a member of Hope, there's an organization that we could connect you with, and it's all free. And they give you 15 hours of answering whatever business questions you want. And that could be as simple as, how do I organize? This is my business. This is what I do. What do you think is the best structure? Helping you to set up that structure, helping you to develop a business plan. It doesn't matter. So there's many resources out there that can help with that if you're not connected with any of them. And I can provide all of those resources to this organization if you all would want that. Some are, Good Work Network, Thrive NOLA, the Urban League, Propeller, just to name a few. And then we work with Pacific Community Ventures once you're a member of Hope, that we could connect you with as well. But that is really important. And all of these organizations are designed just to help you get through the financial process, because keeping track of, having your business on paper is important, so that when there are financial resources out there that's available and there's grants available, the first thing that they want is, they want to know, do you have a plan? Do you have a tax return? And so that's really important, whether we agree with that or not. That's really important, and that definitely helps. And talking about paper, having a budget with, a budget in some cases, in some industries is, exactly what you're going to make every week, right? In your case, you may know, you may not know, but you may have projections, right? Or you can set goals. but you do know what your expenses are going to be most of the time. And so putting that on paper is really key to help you to stay on track and to set some goals and to move to the next level. So it may mean, that I may have to, stretch and do more gigs, because of a situation that happened last week. And so, how do you do that? You need to think about how you do that. And if that means setting that up in a spreadsheet or using some of the online tools that they have to put that on paper, then I would suggest that is something that you need to do. And your banker can help you with that too. That's real simple. I'd be happy to do that with any of you at any time. Because we know in these businesses there's highs and lows. Something can happen that can deter you for that moment, right? But you're all creative people, so then you come up with other avenues. I was just amazed at some of the creative ideas for entertainment during COVID. It was just amazing. So I know you are all creative, but sometimes you have to pivot, and there may be a pause for a period of time. So planning can help you to get through those times, right? Again, being creative, thinking of, just always thinking of what are some other streams of income. What can I do with my creativity and my entrepreneurial spirit? How can I create other streams of income? That's something key that you should think about all the time as well. And we talked a little bit about credit, right? So credit is important when you are looking to obtain higher assets. If that is, buying more equipment, if that's buying a new car or truck, or if that's investing in a home, credit is important. If there was a period of time where your credit score dropped, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to stay there, right? There's steps that you can take to enhance that credit score. I talked about one of the products that Hope has that could help you through that. But understanding what that credit score is, if you have one, you can obtain a free credit report at least once a year. And I think it's important to do that just to understand what that credit score is. Hope, being a CDFI, doing the work that we do, we look at lower credit scores, but you have to come with something that we can work with, right? But again, we don't always say no. Sometimes it's not at this time, but these are some of the steps that we have to take. And we'll point you in the right direction and then match you with, with the technical assistance provider that can help you through that. And then finally, I know following me is going to be the tax accountant and tax conversation. It's just really important to keep your financial documents in some sort of order, again, so that you can be available if there's any resources out there, any grant programs out there, any forgivable loan programs that could be out there that you can apply for that can help you to propel further in your business. So that was probably very high level, but I would be happy at the end or at whatever point to entertain any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. We have a couple minutes just with the schedule that I'd put together. If folks have questions right now, I would say go for it. In the meantime, I was going to just ask sort of a question that had come up a couple times in conversations that I've had with folks, which is about how to get your kids set up for financial success, particularly if you have a young kid who's, maybe passionate about music or seems like they're heading in a direction of having a creative life, or they come from a creative family and that's just, sort of the assumed career path. So if there's anything, I guess, that you want to touch on with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll be happy to do that. So with it, in some of our households, financial conversations were not comfortable, right? They were not comfortable, or they didn't happen. So my suggestion is that you have conversations with the kids to help them to understand the value of a dollar, right? And that could be either giving them an allowance, and then they have to pay for certain things. That could be their cereal at the grocery store. That could be, you know, their next pair of jeans or tennis shoes or sheet of music. You know, I don't know what that is. And so kids do. I know my granddaughter does. She has this refillable card, you know. And when I get the Grammy, I love you, how are you, and a text, I know what's coming next, right? She wants a cash app so she can fill her card because she's seen something on Amazon that she wants. And so set goals for them, you know, set goals for them so that they can start to understand what the value of a dollar is. If it is, you know, a kid that start playing music and they are blessed with an instrument, make sure they understand how much that cost, how much that instrument cost, so that they can start to understand the value of a dollar at that point. And then I would take that a step further, make sure that they have an account, make sure that they understand, you know, how they can deposit into that account, whether that's through your mobile app, their mobile app. I know kids have access to lots of things these days, but let them do some of that themselves, where they can have access to a bank statement, let them see the bank statement and how their money has grown, set goals for that money. So, I mean, just the same conversations that we as adults should do, but, you know, just start it really simply and let them be engaged with that. But I would say, getting them to budget, setting goals, making sure that they save, and engaging with a financial institution at an early age is really healthy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm gonna switch over to Aaron, who's our, let me see, did I do this right? Aaron, there we go. Yeah, Aaron,
Hey,
tell us some stuff.
hey, yeah, thanks. Yeah, so last time I did this, we talked about all the COVID relief dollars and programs that were out there and available. I think most of that, I mean, there's still some programs out there, but I think most of that sort of has passed. So since we're at the end of the year, I think we talk about getting ready for tax time. That'll be here soon, and it's kind of good to get prepared now that it's close to the end of the year, and maybe some tips for some things you can do since we'll be starting a fresh year in 2022. Before that, one, you know, speaking of SBA and the CARES Act programs, there is some IDA relief funds with through the SBA right now. So if anyone interested in that, it's they have a loan program if you, were out of work or had property damage for IDA. So SBA's website has something there. So just want to mention that first. That program is available. But tax time. So I'm assuming most of you all here are considered independent contractors, or you get, you know, your own gig economy, or you get paid with cash. So you're basically, that means you're run a small business. You know, you're not employed or employees of anyone. So naturally your taxes are a little more complicated. It's on you to sort of keep up with all your records. You know, if you were an employee, you had a job, you just received a paycheck every 2 weeks, you know, you would get a W-2 in the mail. You could just take that form, put it on your tax return, and, you know, you either get a refund or you owe it. It's really simple. But since you're not, you know, your tax return is a little more complicated. You're basically have to provide your own numbers. You don't get a form in the mail that has everything there for you. So keeping good records is important. You know, like Kathy said, you know, you want good records. So if there is a program that pops up, if we have another COVID, hopefully not, if we are some other issue where there's programs available to you, having those good records is good for that, on top of being prepared for your taxes. So, you know, the number one tip that I give to people for this is have a separate bank account for your business. That's the number one thing you can do to help get organized. If some of you may have an LLC set up and you have a bank account for the LLC, even if you don't, it's not necessary. Even if you don't, I would suggest opening a separate bank account for your business where all of your business transactions go through one account. So, the main reason for that is that, at the end of the year, when it's time to do your taxes, if you don't have that separate account, then you're going through all your bank statements and trying to sort out, was this business, was this personal, and having to tally all of that stuff up. And it's just time consuming. It's a good way to miss things. But if you have a separate account where all of your business transactions go through one account, then it's all there. You have one place, you can just pull those bank statements, you can take all the transactions from there, those are all business. And that's just an easy way to get organized. Also, if you already get audited, you have all of those things in one account, where the IRS isn't combing through all your personal statements. That's the number one simplest thing to do, is to have a separate bank account, have a separate credit card. Anything you do that you think's business related, you use that card, you run it through that bank account. Another thing, if QuickBooks Online is a good resource to keep track of your transactions. They have a self-employed version where you can link all of your bank accounts. It'll download the transactions for you, and all you have to do is go through and tell it what each transaction is for. That way, that makes it much easier. At the end of the year, you can run some reports. You have it all there for your tax return. There is a fee for QuickBooks, so there may not be for everyone. If you don't have a ton of transactions, it might not be worth the fee. But QuickBooks Online, they have a self-employed version. That's a good, definitely a good way to keep track of everything. Another thing to keep in mind is, you want to try to keep receipts as much as possible. The rule for the IRS is if it's over $75, you need to have some sort of receipt. That can be in your email, can be electronic, doesn't have to be a paper receipt. I think a lot of bank apps now have an option where you can take a picture of your receipt and it'll save it in your online banking. There's other independent apps you can get online where you can take pictures. So that's, it's not something that you necessarily have to have for your tax return or for your accountant if you have one, but it's something you need just in case you were to ever get audited. So you want to be able to have that backup if you were to ever get audited. Another thing to keep in mind, if you're paying out other individuals and you pay them over $600, you're required to send them a 1099. Just like if you're an independent contractor, you're probably used to receiving 1099s from those people that pay you. Well, you also have that same burden. So if you are, say you're in a band and you pay out the other musicians in your band, and over the course of the year you pay them more than $600, you're technically required to send them a 1099. If the IRS was to audit you, you could, there's penalties for each 1099 that you don't send. So just be aware of that requirement. The due date for those is the end of January. So you're supposed to have those filed by the end of January. There are some online resources where you can file those electronically. Again, if you're using QuickBooks, it's really easy. They have as long as you've entered the people that you've been paying, as long as you have their info entered, their address and social, You can easily file those online. They'll even mail them out for you, or email them out to the people if you have their email addresses. So that's another benefit to having QuickBooks. But if you don't use them, there's some other resources out there to do that online, or you can, if you have an accountant that's doing your taxes, you can ask them. They can, we do that for all of our clients. Your accountant can probably handle that for you. And the last thing is, so again, you're basically running a small business when you're self-employed. So, it's use the separate bank account, use QuickBooks if that makes sense for you. If not, having a spreadsheet that you update periodically with all your income and your expenses by category, that's going to give you a good idea of where your income level is and what you're going to have to report on your tax return. Since you're not employed, traditional employee, you're not having taxes withheld. You're not having taxes paid in. You're having to pay the entire portion out of pocket. It's not being withheld from your paycheck. So that can end up being a big burden at the end of the year. So keeping a spreadsheet of all the income and expenses, keeping track of what your net income is, that'll give you an idea of what you could potentially owe in taxes. It's too late for 2021 to make estimated payments. You'll have to pay what you owe in April. But for 2022, if you get organized with the bank statements, if you can keep a spreadsheet or QuickBooks file, a good idea is to start making quarterly estimated payments to the IRS. If you, a good rule of thumb is take 25% of what your income is after your expenses, and go ahead and pay that into the IRS each quarter. You're supposed to do that anyway. It makes it less of a big check you have to write at the end of the year in April when you file your tax return. And technically the IRS can penalize you for not making those quarterly estimated payments. So it's really something you're supposed to be doing. I recommend that to everyone, to go ahead and make, once you're organized, then you can have an idea of what your income level is, and then you can make those payments so you're not stuck with a big tax bill at the end of the year. But yeah, my biggest tip, go back to this: get a separate bank account for your business. It's okay. You transfer money into your personal account periodically and you use that for personal expenses, but keep everything separated in your business, and that'll save you so much time. And if you have an accountant, that will save them time too.
Aaron,
any questions? Happy to answer.
Just as a technical side, if anybody has a question, they may have to. I may have to unmute them from my side. So if somebody's talking and I'm not responding, like just write something in the chat or whatever. But yeah, Aaron, thank you so much. And I was also just going to say, because I know that, again, a lot of this stuff can sound really scary and daunting, especially when you're talking about the IRS and this and that. Just a reminder that like any steps are good steps. So if the idea of a spreadsheet is like way overwhelming, because spreadsheets can seem kind of, too technical and this and that, write a list in a notebook. And yeah, paying quarterly taxes. That's not something that I've ever done, but my partner does it, and just seeing him do it for the last couple of years has really, it's sort of helped me understand it better. And it does seem like it's a really achievable thing. And so
yeah, you typically, it's not fun to have to write that check every quarter, but you're typically glad you did when it comes time to file your taxes, because otherwise it ends up being a really big check you have to write in April. So Yeah, yeah. And you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you you spend that money that you should have gone to the IRS. And that's sort of a way to keep yourself disciplined, is to make those payments each quarter. So for sure.
I was going to just throw out, I guess, just sort of one more, again, like bridging that gap between sort of getting started and then being an expert. Many years ago, I would keep a lot of my cash from gigs in different envelopes that were labeled for different things, like paying bills, or like this envelope was for, I don't know, getting, massages, or, just any different sort of designated expenses that I had. I tried to put them in envelopes. And someone I know literally convinced me to open some separate online savings accounts by calling them digital envelopes. And it was like, I needed that. I needed it to be sort of put in those terms. So that's literally still how I think of them is, if you have a separate bank account for your business expenses or whatever, it is the equivalent of the separate envelope or the separate coffee can under your bed.
Yeah.
And yeah, Aaron, I'm so glad you said that, because it truly is the best way to start, is just, again, kind of getting your stuff on paper.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, so what I'm going to do is turn it over to Margie and Derrick to kind of just talk again from that practitioner perspective. This is what I call if Aaron's section was the sort of some things that might sound scary about the IRS section, this is the, things I'd wish somebody told me years ago section. So Derrick and Margie, I don't think I can sort of pin both y'all's videos at the same time. So I'm just going to put this on speaker view and let you guys take it away. Wait. Again with the tech here. Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good. You go first, Margie.
Okay. Well, this is going to be a really interesting year. When when tax, when it does come time to file taxes, because and I'm sure all of us are dealing with this, between the grants and the, if we happen to get a loan, because I got an SBA loan through my LLC, and but I also pay my band members through Venmo and PayPal and Zelle, and I learned, in the last year that, have as much on record as you can. And Google has been my friend. I've been using, Google Sheets and just putting everything on spreadsheets and just keeping track of everything. Like my Google Calendar, I have it set up where I can look at it and see what gigs I had and who I paid and who was on the gig, and with anything that requires a 1099 that I'm going to be receiving. I'm just doing so much more record keeping than I was in the past. And in the past, I thought I was doing a great job, but I've learned so much in this past year that, you've really got to keep an eye on everything, because it can get completely out of hand if you're not careful. And at the end of the year, it's coming up, and I've got a lot of things to look through. But luckily they're all digital instead of a pile of papers on my desk. So it'll just be easier to look through things. And I do my own taxes, but I use the free TurboTax, which is there's two free versions. And the one version that I use, they don't really tell you much about this, that it exists. But you can even do, because there's, like I said, there's two free versions of it. The one that most people know, you can only do your 1040 EZ or the 1040. You can't do a Schedule C, but
what is a 1040?
Where your 1040 EZ, like your, you know, if you have just like one W-2 at the end of the year, or if, you know, if you don't have a lot of 1099s, you know, you can use that. But if you have a lot of 1099s, which is my case, the other free version of TurboTax, you can do that. So I've been able to do my own taxes these last few years.
Is there like if somebody was looking for that, how would they find the secret TurboTax?
Well, I found out about it through, there was a TV show a while back. Hassan Minhaj hosted it, called The Patriot Act. And he did a segment on how, you know, Intuit, the company that owns TurboTax, and other tax companies, they, you know, they kind of keep this secret from you. So there's a website that they set up called it's TurboTax Sucks Ass is the I think .org. I think it's .org. But you can go on there and they have a list of all the tax preparation companies that have this real free version. And you know, it's like, I'm just so glad that I discovered it. And you just click on there and it takes you to whatever, you know, to their real site. But yeah, so TurboTax Sucks Ass is the you know, because they're, you know, the IRS was requiring all these companies to do that. So they would turn around and say, okay, we have a free version, but you can only do your 1040 EZ on it. But, you know, most of us know that, you know, there's a majority of people that, like the ones that are on gig economy and things like that, you know, our taxes are much more complicated. And they're supposed to allow you to do your taxes for free, no matter what kind of, you know, complications you have. So they, so Hassan Minhaj did some research and found that a lot of these companies have 2 different free versions. And so TurboTaxSucksAss.org, that's the way to go. And I'm gonna look it up and make sure that it's the .org. I think it's .org. But yeah, that's been my adventures in taxes in these past few years. I think I've used it like 3 years now, and it's great. You know, so far so good. I haven't been audited, you know, but I do everything on the up and up anyway. So, you know, if I do get audited, I've got everything documented. But that was really good advice that Aaron was giving about having a separate bank account for your business. Because, you know, especially if you're paying out band members, you know, you've got to keep track of that, you know, as well as, you know, because you've got money coming in. When you get a 1099 and you forget who you paid, then you've got to sit there and figure out, okay, who was on this gig? And, you know, it could have been months ago and, you know, you don't remember. And then you've got to figure out, you know, ask somebody, you know, hey, were you on this gig? You know,
I wanted to actually, I mean, that's a perfect, I guess, sort of opening. Something I just wanted to make sure that we talked about just a little bit is this idea of kind of, you know, these micro structures of, you know, every band leader is not just like a small business owner, but, you know, a tiny boss. And, you know, and the fluidity of cultural work, you know, and it's not just musicians, you know, if you sell art at a market and you usually have, you know, Joe helping you out, and one week you have Jim, and you have to go back and like figure out, you know, how many weeks, you know, if you're paying somebody to assist, or, you know, you're a performer and you have somebody who's usually the door person, you know, at the Always Lounge, and then, you know, some weeks you have somebody else. So just that idea of recognizing these sort of tiny mini structures, these like tiny economic structures that is literally what the cultural economy is made up of. I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. And so Margie, I'm just really glad you said that, because that's partly why I have you Derrick here is, folks who are not just musicians, but also band leaders, because that really is where it can get just so complicated. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there and just mention, because that does apply, I think, across a lot of different cultural disciplines, is this idea of all the people that we work with. Like, we each have our own little, networks, and very often there's, it's fluid who's working on a given week. And so you have this kind of rotating roster. So, Derrick, you wanna?
Yeah, I want to kind of just echo what Margie was saying about I too, Google's also my friend, Margie, in that regard. But Google's not a necessity. There's many platforms that offer ways to organize through spreadsheets and accounting and what have you. Spreadsheets changed my life. It's almost like a religion to me at this point, because like I wasn't using them for the first 20 years of me doing this, and it was less difficult when I was playing like in established groups where it's the same 6 people every, all 3 times a week or whatever. But then you start a brass band in New Orleans, and all of a sudden I have 30 employees. So I'm like, okay. And at first it was just a means for me to just figure out who was on the gig. I was just trying to figure out a better way to do that instead of like searching through emails and text messages and group messages and whatnot, right? So I'm gonna just start a spreadsheet. It was listed by instrument and date, venue, and just list who's on the gig, right? And then by doing that, it was like, oh wait, I could actually just add other categories to the spreadsheet. So it's like, now I know who's on the gig, where the gig was, what the date of the gig was. Now I can also add how much the gig paid and how much I paid everybody else. So it's literally all in one place. You know what I mean? Then you set it up to where like the spreadsheet, it does a monthly what you call it, update. So like each month there's a number of what came in and went out. So which is very important for doing your taxes, right? Just like Aaron was saying, is then you know exactly what came in and what came out, which is like most of the battle, right, when it comes to taxes. So it's interesting in from my standpoint too, because most of, I think actually maybe 100% of the people that play with me are all band leaders as well. So there's a whole ecosystem involved around that too, right? So the tentacles spread really far. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I pay James Martin or I pay Mark Levron, whatever amount of money I'm paying them, and they use that money to pay whoever they're paying on their gig, it's like it's a whole thing. So it's really important to document all those trails, because or our whole community gets overtaxed. It's like an ecosystem thing, really. And it's if each individual artist keeps like a detailed track of transactions and income and expenses, I mean, it makes the whole community richer, smarter and wealthier. Just, and it's also like leading by example. You know what I mean? Like 1099 are your people, and not paying them in cash as much. You know what I mean? Like I've learned too. I just take all the cash and I Venmo people tomorrow. You know what I mean? Because it just makes more sense from a payroll standpoint, and also that it's documented. Also because just like Google Sheets or QuickBooks, also Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, they also keep a record. Like, this is how much you paid this person this year. It's literally right there. So there's no guessing game. So just detailed on the apps are your friends. Like, don't be afraid of the apps. Just use them. They're beneficial. Calendars are important. Details are important. Spreadsheets are religion.
Spreadsheets are a religion. Spreadsheets are a rabbit hole. I was gonna say, I feel like I want to just sort of, pause and check in here. I feel like, hopefully there's a lot of stuff here that is helping to kind of bridge any gaps that folks feel between sort of where they're at and where they might want to be. in terms of, what they're able to do. If there are any questions right now, I feel like this is a great time for anybody to jump in. And then I've got just a few more things, including some specific resources that are available right now. But if anybody's feeling, I guess, moved to say anything or circle back to anything that we've touched on. All right. I'm going to take that to mean that everybody's learned everything and is expert. Okay. If somebody, and I'm sorry if you weren't able to say this because I'm not good with the unmuting, but Shanice says in the chat, if I decide to go the LLC route, how do you build business credit? That is such a great question, and I think there's people on here who can answer it. I'm gonna just unmute everybody, I guess, because I feel like at this point,
I can answer that question. Well, again, going back to what I was saying, if you have detailed information on your income and accurate tax returns, when you open said bank account or at the credit union or the bank under your LLC, more than likely you already qualify for a line of credit just based on that. You know what I'm saying? So, like Kathy was saying earlier, I think most banks will just give you money for having your ducks in a row, right? They're not going to give you $10,000 off the bank, but they will give you $500 or $1,000 and allow you to pay that back, right? Which builds your credit up. And then the next time they'll give you $2,500 of a line of credit. You know what I'm saying? Up until the point where like now I'm getting like $10, $15, $20,000 lines of credits because there's so much income coming in. We just pay it off as soon as possible. So, and that's how you build credit. And then all of a sudden, like you're qualifying for like actual credit cards, like not like the cheaper ones that they send everybody, like the ones that like get you like good things at the airport and like cheaper car rentals and all like so it's just it all starts like with Aaron from jump, like just having everything in a row. Then you know how much you're worth, and the bank knows how much you can afford to pay them every month, and they will give you a loan based on that number. So it's all just goes back to having everything in order and being super organized.
I wanted to just say I've now changed the setting so anybody can unmute themselves to talk, hopefully. And I also wanted to ask, I guess, so there's an additional question here. It says, would you suggest getting credit cards with your bank first? And I also wanted to, I guess, ask a question to maybe dig in a little bit more on Shanice's first question, which is, are there any sort of important or particular differences between business credit and personal credit that are important to understand?
This is Kathy, I'll jump in. So in most cases, in most financial institutions for smaller loans and smaller loans, if we're talking about small business, that could be loans up into the millions, right? So we're going to be looking at personal guarantees. So we're going to look at personal credit. So if you form an LLC, and you file your taxes, it's going to show your personal income as well as your business income. And so everything really is going to be, in most situations, everything's going to be based on your personal credit. So we can still put it in a business name, but it's going to be based on your personal credit. And then I saw the question, would you suggest getting credit cards with your bank first? A credit card is just like a line of credit, right? It's revolving, you're approved to a certain amount. It really depends on what your needs are. If you're looking to build credit, you don't necessarily have to start with a credit card. We want to understand what is it that you want to do. If you just need to have money available to you for expenses that you want to pay off every month, then maybe it is a credit card. But if you need to make a certain purchase, or that your goal to make a certain purchase, or you have a certain thing that you want to purchase, it isn't necessary that you had a credit card first. And, I know a lot of people have started in the past with department store credit cards and those sorts of things. Interest rates are very high on those, right? We are looking for you to minimize your expenses and minimize fees and minimize interest. So again, it just depends on your particular need, but not necessarily having to start with a credit card.
That was fantastic. And Shanice also says, I want to buy property under the business LLC to have a studio. Shanice, am I right that you work with dancing grounds? We're talking about a dance studio. Is that what we're talking about? So I guess, yeah, so the specific question, and also, by the
Sorry,
way,
I couldn't unmute because I was with a 2-year-old. But yes, and I work with dancing grounds, but I am also a performer, educator in the city, and I want to have my own space for my son and I, in addition to like a residency space. So I want to own property, but I want to do it under my business name. So that's something I'm thinking about.
That's perfectly fine. Again, your personal credit is going to be considered, but you can put it in a business name. And then of course, your business income is going to be considered for the loan as well. So if you know, when it comes to an actual loan applications, most financial institutions are going to look for either 2 or 3 years of tax returns. If it is a startup, we do startups. You may have done something as a sole proprietor, or you may have done something working for someone else. We would consider that too, based on, you know, if it's a startup, then we're going to be looking at some experience that you might have had in that industry. So it may not necessarily be a tax return, but again, we could use a tax return that's for your personal or business, because some people would do it. Some people would do all their, you know, may do their tax returns as a sole proprietor. That means that's under your 1040, all looking personal under your name. And then you decide, okay, I'm ready to buy this building. I want to form my LLC. So the LLC could be a new established LLC, but that doesn't necessarily mean your business practice is totally new. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
and I feel like that's a really great pivot to kind of go back to talking about what I mentioned at the beginning, which is that this workshop today is structured specifically to have what I'm calling office hours, where the idea is that a lot of times it seems like what is super helpful for anybody in their sort of particular goals or what their particular project is just some help or some guidance. So what I'm going to do is when I send out the recording from today, I'm also going to send out a whole bunch of sort of, you know, financial literacy resources, and all this is going to be on the MACNO website as well. There's going to be a whole sort of rundown of folks offering office hours. And so, for example, and that roster is still getting sort of finalized. And also I wanted to say, I don't think I'd said it today, that this workshop is funded by the New Orleans Tourism and Cultural Fund. So I just wanted to shout them out as well, because they're also what's making the office hours possible. And so, for example, what I would list for myself is that I'm not a financial professional, but I've been a working musician, and I'm pretty good with sort of paperwork and documentation. So for example, I wouldn't, you know, if somebody was looking at the office hours, you know, I wouldn't necessarily be able to help somebody do the specifics of getting an LLC to start a dance studio. But what I'm not bad at is helping somebody get their paperwork together to get the LLC. And I'm pretty good at helping people fill out grant applications and things like that. So what I'm going to be sending out is this roster of sort of local experts and practitioners in a variety of fields who are making some of their time available. And I'm sorry that I don't have that roster yet today. I was hoping to have it done, but it's not quite done. But that is sort of the follow-up to today, is for folks to be able to then actually like dig in on their own projects. And related to that, I did want to also mention one very specific opportunity that is open right now. I'm going to put this in the chat. So I'm just reading this over here, which is the Creative Response Network, which has done a lot of aid for folks throughout the pandemic, is doing another round of grants. And these grants are $500 or $1,000 each. The application is relatively quick. It's like 12 or 15 minutes, some pretty basic information. You don't need things like tax information. There's nothing sort of really obstacle-y in this application. And they're unrestricted. It's not that you need to make art and show that you've made art or do something specific with it. It is unrestricted and can be used for any expenses that support the artist. So I wanted to put that out there as well, because that's also open. And as part of that application, they've actually built office hours into that as well. So there's folks from all the different organizations behind that grant who are making themselves available for, I think it's like an hour and a half a day. And all of this information is at this tiny URL link that I put up here. So again, if you want to apply for this, there's built-in help. Somebody can either just walk you through, or you can try it and you get, and something is not working right, and you can just sign in or call. So I'm just super excited that this is open right now, because it's something that is going to help a lot of folks. $500 or $1,000 is real. So that the timing just happens to work great that is open when we're doing this today. So I was super excited to be able to publicize that. And like I said, I'm going to be sort of putting out all this information after the fact, and I'm going to be sort of creating a section. So MACNO's website, I'm just going to put this here in the chat again, macno.com. The MACNO website has a lot of different information on it, but one thing that I'm about to sort of build out and beef up over the next couple of weeks is financial literacy information. So that's going to be everything taken from today. I might just have a little bar that says spreadsheets are a religion, credited to Derrick, because I think that's just an amazing, amazing fact. And all of this information is going to be made available, made accessible. And again, the idea of this workshop and the office hours that are built into this new grant that's open is that historically, a lot of the things that kept people, there's a lot of different obstacles to people being able to, like Ms. Kathy said, to building wealth. And a huge chunk of that is just lack of it being accessible. And so there's a lot of work right now, both from MACNO and from what I'm working on with these workshops and other organizations and local professionals. And I mean, this goes on nationwide as well, to make that more accessible, to make it not something that is sort of a thing that you can kind of access if you are coming from the right kind of privilege, or if you have the right kind of resources. And if you don't have that, then you're just sort of left out of it, and there's no sort of easy entry. So the idea here is to bring all of this to bring everything down to the most accessible point. And all of that is going to be on the MACNO website going forward. Everything from today, I've been taking notes, and all of these resources and a bunch of other local resources, and as well as any grants on sort of a rolling basis. But the general idea is that if something feels daunting, there is help, and a lot of people on this call are able to to offer that help, and we're trying to sort of bring that forward, and there'll be lots more information coming about that. So with all of that, in the last little while that we've got, if there are any other questions, I feel like this is a great time for that, or thoughts that have come up, reflections, ideas, inspirations, any of that.
I have a question. Okay, so I'm actually in the middle of trying to decide whether I should have a business for profit or for nonprofit. Hannah, I have spoken with you. I used to work for the New Orleans Healing Center, and I used to work there and work out with them. So I'm in the middle of a documentary series I told you called The Bayou Interviews, interviewing small business owners, musicians, and artists, just kind of sharing their light on what their perception of success is, because it's different for everyone. So I'm kind of in the blindfold stage of, should this be for profit or nonprofit, and how I should delegate and go about that moving forward.
Just my computer was doing something a little funny, and it wasn't identifying who was speaking. Would you mind, if you're comfortable?
Covington 504. My little background's like a little mess right now. I'm like in the middle of deep cleaning. So that was my inquiry of If I am doing something, let's say preservation, preserving the history of the culture, whether I'm interviewing a musician or an artist or a small business owner, what are some points that I could look at to try and make it, either deciding between to make it a profit or a nonprofit business? Like, how would I go about that properly?
That's such a great question. And I feel like that question, like the answers to that question, I feel like will help so many people. The short version is I don't know off the top of my head. I'm curious if anybody
Right.
has a place to start, even like if there's I know that this is something that comes up a lot. There may be some like websites out there. I'm actually gonna go research that question because I'm curious myself. But if anybody on this call has any insights into that, otherwise,
I work with a lot of nonprofits. I can give you a little, my take on it.
Okay.
So I guess to form a nonprofit, you need to have a board. So you have to have a board of directors. You have to, ask a few people to serve on your board. You'll have to get some bylaws. You have to apply for nonprofit status with the IRS. Your compensation, assuming like you would work for the nonprofit, would be determined by the board that is formed, and any profits that the nonprofit would make would have to go back into the mission of why you started this nonprofit. So it's a little complicated to do the nonprofit route, but you don't pay tax as a nonprofit. That's the benefit financially wise. But to form, if you're doing this as a for-profit, there's really, you don't do any of those things. You earn the money, you pay the tax on it, you claim it on your income tax return. It's just like any other business. So, I guess to determine, I guess you have to get more into detail on like, what are your, reasonings for considering a nonprofit route. Maybe this isn't the form for all of that, but like, what's your reasonings behind that? But it's a process to be a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was some good advice. You have to determine what your reason is for why you want to do a nonprofit as opposed to a profit. And depending on that reason, it could be a very good decision. But just as the last gentleman stated, there are many regulations to it. But again, if it's for the right reasons, it's fine. Money is very restricted, right? So there may be more opportunities out there to get grants, but you really have to understand, and some of those funds can be very restricted, and you have to use it strictly for what that grant was issued for. You have to keep very good records, because in some cases it could be forgivable money that if the laundry list of things wasn't done, then you'd have to pay it back. So just a lot of regulations and a lot of stipulations, having your bylaws, having your boards, all of that. But again, if it's for the right reasons and it makes sense, then it's a good thing.
I'm going to add one other option, which is something that has come up a bunch, again, during the pandemic and people trying to access resources, which is what's called a fiscal sponsor, which is an established nonprofit can take on a particular project. If, for example, I guess I'll give a recent real life example, which is the New Orleans Tourism and Cultural Fund, which provided the grant to do this this series of workshops. You have to be either a nonprofit, or I think if you have an LLC, you can go through them. But MACNO acted as the fiscal sponsor, which just means sort of the umbrella, or like it's sort of like attaching yourself to an already existing nonprofit. And it's something that a lot of folks do. I mean, MACNO before, because it takes a long time to become a 501c3, back in like 2000 and I think like 13 and 14, when we were thinking about it, we had a fiscal sponsor. It was an organization that specifically dealt with sort of arts and policy. And so that's something I also, I guess, wanted to offer as you know, it's very much, you know, on a case by case basis, but when it's the right project, MACNO is super happy to function in that capacity. And traditionally in a fiscal sponsorship, I think it's 5 to 7% of the money would go to the fiscal sponsor organization, but MACNO also, particularly with smaller amounts, you know, if somebody's applying for, you know, $300 to make a piece of art or something, you know, not doing it at no cost. So that is, it's sort of an in-between option. I mean, basically, I guess to echo what the other folks were saying, making a 501c3 is a ton of work. And, you know, and then once you have it, you can do certain things with it and it gives you some flexibility. Making an LLC can be really simple. But then, you know, it's a little bit sort of a smaller project, I guess. But just the idea that established 501c3s can act as fiscal sponsors or what's the other, or fiscal agent, I guess is the other term that gets used. And that is something, especially for a newer project, you know, that can be an option as well. So if that's something that you want to talk more about, I'm definitely open. And if MACNO's not the right organization, you know, there's a lot of nonprofits in town, and, you know, finding the right sort of umbrella to tuck yourself under is super doable as well. So I wanted to throw that in.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Miss Kathy. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Miss Margie. Thank you, everyone, for being here and showing up. You know, this is a very monumental time, I think, for people to really get themselves together to move forward collectively, especially as a community. So I appreciate everyone showing up. Your advice, your time is very valuable. So thank you so much for helping out.
I'm super excited to talk with you more just about that project, because yeah, when last we spoke, it's
Right.
very, very intriguing, and just it makes my nerd side kind of perk up, you know, hearing about
Right.
we have a couple minutes left here. Any other, you know, same thing, questions, thoughts? And if not, in the interest of everybody's time, I am completely happy to end this a couple minutes before 7. I feel like this was a really rich discussion. I feel like I learned a bunch of stuff. I feel like I have a bunch of things I want to follow up on, and there'll be lots and lots of follow up from today. So with that, I'm happy to say good night and enjoy your Wednesday evening. And yes, huge thank you to Ms. Kathy and Aaron and Margie and Derrick for bringing back their roles from April as our resident experts. And I'm excited about the idea of more and more people feeling, I guess, financially fluent, or feeling like they can do what they need to do, and feeling like things are not out of reach, and things are not inaccessible, and things are not, you know, full of barriers and obstacles. So I guess here's to removing barriers and obstacles. And on that note, I will say good night, y'all. Thanks so much.